Good afternoon, and welcome to the Cultural Hour with the Art Gallery at Eastern Connecticut State University. Today, we are honored to welcome Xuân Pham, a multidisciplinary artist and educator whose work explores the intersections of trauma, migration, race, and cultural memory. Currently serving as a visiting assistant professor at Mount Holyoke College, Pham brings a deeply thoughtful and tactile approach to her practice, working across drawing, sculpture, and installation. Her recent solo exhibition, titled Between, at Strata Gallery in Santa Fe, New Mexico, used sheer garments and life-size drawings to explore the boundaries between the visible and invisible, the professional and political. We are excited to speak with her today about her creative process, inspirations, and her current work with students and the community and Mount Holyoke. Welcome, Swan.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello.
Can you tell us about your path into the arts?
Yes, I think my path into the arts takes many different turns, like I think every artist does. It's not a very clear path into the arts. I think it's a cliche thing to say, but sometimes art find you. And I think that was the absolute case for me. I immigrated from Vietnam to Omaha, Nebraska when I was 7. And growing up, I didn't even know what an artist was or is. And I didn't know you can even make a living out of being an artist. And I think art found me in a way where it sort of saved me a lot from my early on childhood of coming up with a language to communicate. And so what drew me to art was that I didn't have to, because I was a really poor English speaker. I was learning English and I had all of these difficult things that I felt was hard to overcome. And drawing just became a language that felt incredibly safe and easy. So I think art found me, as cliche as that is.
What is your formal education and how did it shape your artistic voice and practice today?
Yeah, so I was trained as a painter and a drawer, and I went through a BFA program in Omaha, Nebraska, and that really those particular 4 years of my undergrad really shaped my thinking about that I could actually become an artist. There was many paths that I was exposed to with a lot of lectures and visiting artists and internships that allows me to understand the art world both commercially academically and also a practicing artist. And that gave me the confidence to really understand that I could participate within the arts. And so, as much as I don't paint anymore, or painting has become not so forward in my own personal practice, I really do think that as a drawer, that really is a filter key that I think through every single piece that I make. I think it through drawing first before I transform it into three-dimensional objects. So I would say drawing has become or is and continues to be the language that I understand a lot of my artwork making through.
Wonderful. Can you walk us through your creative process? How do your ideas evolve from concept to material form to the drawing?
Yes, I think through drawing first, I sketch. I think it's really important for students or any artist practice to have a sort of sketching practice, whatever that may look like for people. But archiving or keeping things in a notebook is essential so that you can refer back to your research. I think for me, my sort of art practice has evolved in very deep research before I can even start to make. So I take a long time to do research. Sometimes when I'm starting a new project, that could take months or it can even be years before I can even develop a body of work that I feel confident showing the public. And so I would actually say 50% of my art making is pure research, and then the other 50 is making. And then those decisions from research will inform me what materials will I make or will I choose to make, will I participate with, and then of course the installation of how I want an audience to walk through it.
How would you describe the work in the exhibition Between, and what does this title means to you?
Yes, so the work in Santa Fe, that solo show between, really sort of resonates with the idea of thinking between two different cultures, being both Vietnamese American. I, when that particular body of work made sense for that a lot because that was how I was thinking when I was making that work. There was a lot of layers and transparency to talk about dualities. And so the drawings were life size, they were meant to be touch. The garments that was made were meant to be worn and activated. So every piece within that show has and or asks the audience to participate either both physically or through thinking about touching it. And that particular show for me was incredibly sort of political in the sense where I made that body of work when I was in graduate school, my first year in graduate school, when the first administration of Trump was elected. And I made that work as a way to talk about vulnerability and how the body is incredibly vulnerable in a space. And so I think about that work as a sort of very particular timestamp that now is still being continued to be sort of returning in my work.
Your work often involves garments and transparent materials. What draws you to these textures and forms?
I think for me in that particular work and work that I continue to explore is that layers and skin is something that's very exciting. That metaphor is incredibly, I found a lot of inspiration from thinking about things that be able to cloak the body, things that can protect the body, but also call upon how vulnerable the body is. And so for me, using transparent fabric to actually say that this is protection makes no sense in that capacity where it's actually highlighting the vulnerability that I'm trying to sort of conceal with an audience and allows for a deeper conversation. And I think as an artist, I'm always constantly just trying to have conversations or make my work um, a starting point for dialogue. And I think that's where my goal is in art making is I just want to have conversations and I'm thinking through materials that allows me to sometimes push back or invite conversations in different forms. So layers, transparency have become a language within my art practice that I find really fruitful.
Wonderful. Can we talk for a minute about the Manchester Community College Art Gallery and its exhibition where you participated, and especially about Ocean Wong, who was part of the conceptual underpinning of this exhibition? How important was his involvement for you, and how did you feel about the whole exhibition at that time?
I was really grateful to be invited to be a part of this three-person show. So it's myself, Ocean, and Tuan, and it's my first participation of all Vietnamese American artists. And for me, that feels so incredibly beautiful and important. And I wish and I can continue to participate in showing work with other Vietnamese artists. It's something that is a privilege I've never had before. And I think I can speak for the three of us by saying that that was the first time the three of us were able to show together and how incredibly important that is for all three of us coming from an immigrant family or is immigrant ourselves. We immigrated here as children and understanding the struggles of going through immigration and then possibly I think the thing is that when you ask us like how do we all entered into art making, I think all of us would say art found us because we never grew up understanding that art could be a possibility. And that show feels and is, and I think I'm getting choked up thinking about how important that is when the three of us were together, sharing how important it is to then even see ourselves in that space. I think that was beautiful, is that we couldn't possibly imagined ourselves in that particular space, but also the Vietnamese identity being pushed forward in the United States is also incredibly important because we don't have a lot of space to talk about that. And so I've always been a fan of Ocean. I love his readings, I love his writing, and I think the ways in which we think about making is from a very deep sense of loss, a very deep sense of grief. And I think the three of us together in that particular show had that sense of eeriness, that sense of grasping for some sort of thing that sometimes words or images can't possibly communicate, but could only be felt. And I hope that that show delivered a sense of feeling um, of both hope and grief that sort of allows an audience member to really understand what is it that actually is that the Asian community or Vietnamese community in particular is grappling with in terms of our immigration.
Oh, here on campus, we had a great honor to read a Tibui book, the best we could do. We had so many students creating their own graphic novels based on this book. It was just a revelation, and again left such a great, memory for me, myself personally, and I hope for the entire campus to experience this novel. And I wonder if you felt touched by this graphic novel, or you experienced, or you interacted with Tibui at any point.
I've not met her personally, and I am a massive fan. I own the book and I love the book, and I have reread it multiple times when I find myself struggling to find words within my own practice or just daily life. And it's a beautiful book, and I urge everyone to own a copy of her book. Beautiful illustration, beautiful storytelling. And I think what's so powerful about her book is the narration, the storytelling, the narrative at the central core of struggle, hope, joy, all the complexities that human beings go through. And you don't have to be an Asian American, a Vietnamese person to understand it. It's literally things that we go through. And that's the power of her work, is that she's a great storyteller.
Truly agree. Yeah, I have been a big fan myself. Haven't seen her recent work, but I'm sure she's coming up with something very, very important. What has your experience been like as an artist in resident and educator in Mount Holyoke?
Yes, I feel incredibly grateful to be a part of the Mount Holyoke community, and even more tremendously grateful to be a part of the art department. I have tremendous respect for all of my colleagues, both as practitioner and as educator. And I think academia is really hard. Being an artist is hard, but being on top of that, being an academic artist is incredibly challenging because there are many different demands from your job. And how can you carry on a sustainable studio practice? And teaching at Mount Holyoke has really informed my practice in a way where it helps me thinking about how can I communicate to a wider audience. And because I'm interacting with students on a daily basis, I run into lots of ways in which communication can be misleading, or it could be more clarified. And I find that to be incredible for my own particular practices because I'm always constantly thinking, how do I communicate? And it allows me to really sit down to pare down the avenues of how to translate a language. Oh, I'm sorry, I think you're mute.
When did you start at Mount Holyoke, and when would be your, is it a 1 year term?
No, I started 3 years ago,
Oh,
and
okay, okay. Mm.
yes, and so I started 3 years ago, and I'm continuing to work there as visiting lecturer or visiting assistant professor, and uh, sorry, you were just asking about how the term is, or
Yes, yeah, and any current projects or exhibitions
oh yes.
you're looking forward to, but also how are you combining both your full-time job, teaching job, and your studio practice?
Yes, I just had a another solo show this year at Hampshire College, in the Hampshire Art Gallery. It's titled Từ Đâu, Where From, and it was my largest installation of my cast tiles that people could walk through and break. And if people are interested, they can go to Hampshire Art Gallery to do a virtual tour of the show. And in that particular show, it also has edible rice paper, which is something that a technique and process that I invented that I'm really excited about how to push that forward. And so I think, again, challenging with teaching and a studio practice is that you have you're only allowed a limited of time to figure out your own practice or devote it to your practice. So I think summertime is the research time. You're full on you can be a full on studio artist. And during the academic year, you are a teacher first. And that's what it is, and that's great. And so I think learning how to balance and be incredibly disciplined is something I have learned in the past 3 years of working full time as an academic artist, is that um, the summer is when I can get 80% of my work done, and that's the only time I have, and I better get it done. So that's how I sort of frame myself in thinking about it.
Wonderful. What advice would you give to young students navigating identity, history, and emotion in their work?
I think for students is that whatever work you are making now as a student is the work you need to make, period. You don't have to chase after a certain aesthetic. You don't have to chase after a certain type of work. Yes, it's very important to look at contemporary artists and see how and where you aligned with certain types of spheres. But whatever is it that you're making now is the most important questions for you to make, because failure now is going to be so important for the future, because it's going to lead you not to answers, but to better questions. You just want to get to better questions that leads you to better forms of making, better ways to articulate yourself, and better ways to present your work. And I think for students, I really hope, and this is something I try to take myself, is because I think as artists, sometimes we want to be perfectionists and we're not ready to quite fully show something when it's fully feels like it's 100% there. But to remind students is that whatever you see in the art market, whatever you see in galleries and museums, that's actually only 30% of what is actually successful in an artist's studio. You don't see the other 70% of pure failure. And I hope students really understand that it takes a long time to develop a language, personal research, and a narrative. So whatever you're doing now is the exact work that you need to do.
Wonderful. And if you go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't be so serious. It's just a painting. It's just a drawing. If you mess up, you can start over, you can repaint. It's not the end of the world. Embrace failure. And I hope I still take this because I need to embrace failure too. But I have to really say, please embrace failure. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a wonderful and very, very important advice. Where can our listeners explore your work, either online or in person?
Yes, so right now you can see my current or my most recent solo show at Hampshire College. It's already taken down. It was from February to March, but there is a virtual tour of the entire exhibition online with some writing and sort of a three-dimensional render of the entire space that you can walk through. So if you just go on to hampshirecollege.com and search my name, you can see the exhibition, and that's where you can view my most current iteration of my work. And of course, my website, you can always visit me and also please reach out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sam. This was a conversation with Sam Pham, a multidisciplinary artist and a visiting assistant professor at Mount Holyoke College, Massachusetts.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia.